The wedding invitation arrived on a hot afternoon in Lapani, the kind of afternoon where dust hangs in the air and everything feels heavy. Nalitha stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Her brother Kwanda's name was written in bold letters, proud and confident, everything she never felt when she thought about herself. There was no warm message inside, no "we'd love to see you." Just the date, the place, and a silent reminder that she was expected to show up and behave. From that moment something felt wrong. When Nalitha mentioned the wedding to her relatives, their smiles were tight and forced. One aunt laughed and said, "So you're really going?" Another whispered that she should at least try to look presentable. Even in the market, a cousin looked her up and down and muttered that weddings were for successful people. Each comment was small, almost harmless on its own, but together they crushed her chest. It was clear, they didn't want her there, but they also didn't want her absence to raise questions. Still, Nalitha convinced herself to go. She told herself that family meant forgiveness, that blood mattered more than pride. She ironed her only good dress, even though it felt too simple, and saved money for transport instead of buying food. On the morning of the wedding, as she walked through Lapani's dusty streets, she felt like she was walking into a place where she had already been judged. But she kept going because a part of her still believed that maybe, just maybe, her brother would see her, smile, and treat her like family again. The wedding hall was loud and bright, filled with music, laughter, and expensive decorations that Nalitha had only ever seen in pictures. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, and guests moved around in elegant clothes, greeting each other like they all belonged to the same world. The moment Nalitha stepped inside, the noise seemed to pause just for her. A few heads turned. Some people stared too long. Others quickly looked away, pretending not to notice her simple dress and worn shoes. Her heart started beating faster, but she told herself to stay calm. She was here for her brother. She found an empty seat at the back and sat quietly, keeping her bag close to her chest. Before she could settle in, a soft laugh came from nearby. Danielle, the bride, stood with her friends, dressed perfectly, glowing with confidence. Her eyes landed on Nalitha, and her smile changed. It wasn't kind. She walked closer, pretending to be curious, then looked Nalitha up and down slowly. "Is this what you decided to wear?" she asked loudly, her voice sweet but sharp. A few people chuckled. Danielle tilted her head and added, "I guess not everyone understands wedding standards, especially from Lapani." Nalitha felt her face burn. She tried to smile, tried to explain that she came with respect, but Danielle didn't let her finish. She talked about Nalitha's background, her struggles, her lack of success, as if it was entertainment for the guests. Every word felt like a slap. People nearby listened openly now. Some whispered. Some smiled. No one stopped it. Nalitha looked around, hoping, praying that Kwanda would step in. Instead, he walked toward them with anger on his face. Not at Danielle. At Nalitha. "What are you doing here?" he snapped, loud enough for others to hear. The room went quiet. Nalitha stood up slowly and said, "I came because you invited me. You're my brother." That word brother seemed to trigger something in him. His face hardened. "You're embarrassing me," he said. "You always have. Look at you. You don't belong here." The words hit harder than Danielle's insults. This wasn't just humiliation. This was rejection. From her own blood. Kwanda continued, his voice rising. "I didn't want you here, but you never understand your place. You ruin everything." People stared openly now. Phones were lifted. Nalitha felt smaller with every second, like the walls were closing in on her. Then Kwanda waved his hand and called for security. 2 guards approached as if she were a criminal. One asked her to leave. Nalitha couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight, her ears ringing. As she walked toward the exit, guided by strangers, she heard laughter, whispers, and the music starting again, like she had never existed. At the door, she turned back once, hoping to see regret in her brother's eyes. There was none. Outside, the doors closed behind her. The celebration continued inside, loud and joyful. Nalitha stood there, shaking, holding her bag, feeling something break deep inside her. It wasn't just her pride. It was the last hope that family would ever choose her. The doors closed behind Nalitha with a dull, heavy sound, and suddenly the world felt too quiet and too loud at the same time. Inside the hall, the music continued, happy, careless, full of life, while she stood outside holding nothing but her small bag. She could still hear laughter, the clinking of glasses, people celebrating love. Every beat of the music felt like it was mocking her, reminding her that she had been erased in seconds. She looked around, hoping to see a familiar face. A cousin stood near the parking area, pretending to be busy on his phone. An aunt walked past her without looking up, as if Nalitha were invisible. When Nalitha tried to catch her eye, the woman quickly turned her head away. No one asked if she was okay. No one offered a ride home. Their silence hurt more than the shouting inside. It told her clearly that they had chosen a side, and it wasn't hers. Her phone began to buzz in her hand. One message after another lit up the screen. "Why did you come if you knew you'd cause drama?" Another said. "You should learn your place." Someone even wrote, "You embarrassed the whole family today." Nalitha stared at the words, her fingers shaking. These were people who shared her blood, people she had defended, people she had once loved deeply. She didn't reply. She didn't have the strength to explain herself anymore. As the night grew darker, guests started leaving the hall in groups, laughing, taking photos, reliving the beautiful moments she was never allowed to be part of. Nalitha stepped away and walked until she found a quiet bench under a flickering streetlight. She sat down slowly, feeling the cold metal seep through her clothes. The air was chilly, and for the first time that day the tears came freely. Not loud sobs, just silent tears that rolled down her face and dropped into her lap. Sitting there alone, Nalitha replayed everything in her mind. Every time she had stayed quiet to keep peace. Every insult she had swallowed because family is family. Every moment she had begged for love without using words, by showing up, by forgiving, by lowering herself. And suddenly, something became painfully clear. In trying so hard to belong, she had slowly lost herself. She had traded her self-respect for acceptance that was never real. She wiped her face and took a deep breath. The music from the wedding hall faded into the distance, but a new voice grew louder inside her head. It told her that love should not hurt like this, that family should not make you feel small, that begging to be valued only teaches people how little you think of yourself. For the first time that night, Nalitha sat up straighter. Her heart still ached, but beneath the pain, something else was forming: clarity. And once clarity arrives, nothing ever feels the same again. Nalitha sat on that cold bench for a long time, staring at the empty road in front of her. The night felt endless, like it would swallow her whole if she stayed still. She thought about going back home, locking herself in her room and crying until morning. That was what she had always done. Disappear quietly, carry the pain alone. But something inside her refused to move in that direction again. She was tired of breaking in silence. She stood up, hugged her bag close, and began to walk without any clear plan. Her feet moved before her mind could stop them. The streets near Lake Mavuno were calmer, the water reflecting soft lights from nearby shops. As she passed by, a small travel office caught her eye. The lights were still on. The window showed faded posters of beaches, blue skies, and smiling people. Places that looked nothing like Lapani, nothing like the life she had been trapped in. Nalitha stopped. She laughed softly to herself, a dry, broken laugh. What was she even thinking? She barely had enough money to survive the month. Traveling was something other people did, people who were wanted, people who had support. She almost walked away. But then she remembered the way the doors of the wedding hall had closed behind her, the way no one followed. That memory pushed her forward. She stepped inside. The office smelled of old paper and dust. A tired man behind the desk looked up and asked where she wanted to go. For a moment, Nalitha couldn't answer. No one had asked her that question in years. "Where do you want to go?" Her throat tightened. Then the words slipped out quietly, almost like a secret. "Azure Coast." The man typed on his computer and told her the price. It was more than she should spend. It was almost everything she had saved, money meant for emergencies, for survival. Nalitha stared at her phone screen, checking her balance again and again, as if the numbers might change. Her heart raced. Fear whispered that this was a mistake. But another voice, stronger this time, told her that staying would cost her more than money. She paid. When the receipt printed, her hands were shaking. It felt unreal, like she had just stepped off a cliff. But as she walked out of the office with the ticket in her bag, something strange happened. Her chest felt lighter. The pain didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip. For the first time that night, she took a deep breath and felt air reach places inside her that had been closed for years. Nalitha wasn't running away from her pain. She knew it would follow her. But this trip wasn't about escaping. It was about giving herself space to breathe, to think, to exist without being judged. As she walked back toward the lake, the water calm and wide in front of her, she realized this decision, this impulsive, terrifying decision, might be the first thing she had ever done just for herself. And somehow that felt like the beginning of everything. The journey to Azure coast began before sunrise. Nalitha sat by the window, her bag at her feet, watching Lapani slowly disappear behind her. The dusty roads, the familiar broken buildings, the places filled with painful memories, all of it faded as the bus moved forward. For the first time in her life, she was traveling alone. No one was telling her to hurry up, to sit properly, to stop dreaming, or to remember her place. The silence felt strange at first, almost scary. Then it started to feel peaceful. As the hours passed, her mind drifted through the years she had spent shrinking herself for others. She remembered being compared to cousins who were richer, smarter, more successful. Every mistake she made was remembered, repeated, and used against her. Whenever something went wrong in the family, her name somehow appeared in the blame. She had learned to stay quiet, to accept it, to believe that maybe she really was the problem. Sitting there now, watching the road stretch endlessly ahead, she wondered how she had carried all of that for so long. At a small stop along the way, passengers got off to stretch and buy tea. Nalitha stepped down and stood in line, unsure of herself. A woman behind her smiled and said, "You're traveling alone? That's brave." The word brave caught Nalitha off guard. No one had ever described her like that. She smiled back, shy but warm, and thanked her. It was a small moment, but it stayed with her. Back on the bus, she spoke with a young man across the aisle who asked where she was headed. When she said Azure Coast, he nodded with excitement and told her about the ocean, the open skies, the feeling of freedom. He listened when she spoke. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge her clothes or her background. He treated her like her words mattered. With every simple conversation, something inside Nalitha began to shift. As the scenery changed, dry land turning into green fields, then open blue horizons, she felt herself changing too. Her shoulders relaxed. Her thoughts became clearer. She realized how much energy she had wasted trying to earn love from people who only knew how to take. Being alone wasn't lonely the way she had feared. It was quiet, yes, but it was a kind of quiet that allowed her to hear herself for the first time. When the bus finally reached Azure Coast, the air smelled different, fresh, alive. Nalitha stepped out and stood still for a moment, letting the breeze touch her face. No one was rushing her. No one was criticizing her. She was just a woman standing in a new place, with a past behind her and a future she could finally shape herself. That night, lying in a simple room with the sound of waves outside, Nalitha smiled softly. She didn't have everything figured out. She was still healing. But for the first time in her life, she felt free. Not because everything was perfect, but because she had chosen herself. On her third morning at Azure Coast, Nalitha walked into a small cafe near the shore, the kind of place that stayed quiet even when the town grew busy. The chairs were simple, the walls decorated with old photos of the coast, and soft music played in the background. She chose a corner table, ordered tea, and opened her notebook, not to write anything important, just to feel grounded. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't hiding. She was simply existing. A man sat at the table beside hers, neatly dressed, calm, with a kind of presence that didn't demand attention but naturally held it. When Nalitha's pen slipped from her hand and rolled near his chair, he picked it up and handed it back with a gentle smile. That small kindness opened the door. They exchanged a few polite words, then a few more. Soon the conversation flowed easily, like it had been waiting to happen. His name was Thabiso Mbeki. He spoke slowly, thoughtfully, and listened even more than he talked. When he asked what had brought her to Azure Coast, Nalitha hesitated. She almost gave the safe answer. But something about his calm eyes made her honest. She told him about the wedding, the humiliation, being thrown out, and deciding to travel alone with her last savings. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't ask for sympathy. She just told the truth. Thabiso didn't interrupt her once. When she finished, he nodded, not with pity but with understanding. "You know," he said, "people who survive moments like that often don't realize how strong they already are." Nalitha laughed softly and said she didn't feel strong at all. He smiled and replied, "Strength isn't loud. It shows in decisions. And you made a brave one." Over the next hour, their conversation deepened. Nalitha spoke about her ideas, her curiosity about business, and her frustration at never being given a real chance. The BISO asked sharp, intelligent questions, not to test her but to challenge her thinking. For the first time, someone treated her mind like it was valuable. He wasn't impressed by her struggles, he was interested in her potential. When he finally told her he was a retired investor, Nalitha was surprised. He didn't look like someone who needed to announce success. He explained that he now spent his time guiding people who were willing to learn and work. Then he said something that made her heart stop for a second. "I'm not offering you help because I feel sorry for you," he said calmly. "I'm offering mentorship because I see something in you. And I don't say that lightly." Nalitha didn't know what to say. Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness this time but from being seen. Truly seen. The BISO handed her his card and told her to think about it, no pressure. As she walked out of the cafe later, the sun warm on her skin, Nalitha realized that this chance meeting wasn't luck. It was timing. And for the first time the future felt like something opening, not closing. The months that followed didn't feel magical or easy. They felt real. Nalitha woke up early every day, often before the sun, with a notebook in her hands and questions in her head. Under the BISO's guidance, she learned things no one had ever bothered to teach her before. How money moves, how decisions create outcomes, how patience can be more powerful than speed. There were days she felt lost and overwhelmed, but for the first time confusion didn't mean failure. It meant growth. She started small. Very small. The BISO insisted on that. Big dreams need strong roots, he told her. Nalitha studied the rhythm of Azure coast. The tourists, the local guides, the quiet needs no one talked about. She noticed visitors struggling to find trustworthy local experiences and small businesses struggling to reach the right people. Slowly an idea formed. She became the bridge between them. At first, she worked from her phone and a borrowed desk in her rented room. She helped tourists book local guides, simple stays, and authentic experiences along the coast. She listened to complaints, fixed problems, and made sure both sides felt respected. The money was modest in the beginning, but it was honest. Every small payment felt like proof that she wasn't useless, that her effort had value. The BISO didn't just guide her with numbers, he guided her mindset. When she doubted herself, he reminded her of how far she had already come. When she wanted to rush success, he slowed her down. "You're building something that should last," he said. Nalitha learned to trust herself, to speak confidently, to negotiate without fear. Each skill felt like a piece of herself being returned. Weeks turned into months, and something surprising happened. Her small idea started growing faster than she expected. Tourists recommended her services to others. Local businesses trusted her because she was fair and reliable. Suddenly, money that once took her years to save came in within weeks. Nalitha would stare at her account balance late at night, shocked, not because of greed, but because she finally understood her own worth. She upgraded carefully, reinvesting instead of spending blindly. A better workspace, a simple website, a small team of locals who needed opportunities as much as she once did. Each step was intentional. Each decision made her stronger. She wasn't just earning, she was building. One evening, as she walked along the shore after a long day, Nalitha stopped and watched the waves. She thought about the girl who had been thrown out of a wedding with nothing but a bag. That girl had felt broken, unwanted, invisible. Now she was a woman creating value, respect, and independence with her own hands. She smiled softly, not with pride, but with quiet confidence. She wasn't famous. She wasn't loud. But she was rising. And this time no one could take it away from her. It started on an ordinary evening. Nalitha was finishing work, replying to messages from tourists, when her phone began vibrating non-stop. At first she ignored it, thinking it was just another busy night. But the notifications kept coming. Missed calls, messages, unfamiliar names tagging her on social media. Confused, she finally opened one link someone had sent with a single line. "Is this you?" The video loaded slowly. The moment it played, her stomach dropped. It was the wedding. Kwanda's wedding. The camera was shaky, taken from somewhere in the crowd, but everything was clear enough. Zaniel's mocking smile. The laughter. Kwanda's angry voice. Then the moment security approached her and guided her toward the door. The clip ended with Nalitha standing frozen, holding her bag, surrounded by eyes that judged but never helped. For a few seconds Nalitha couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled as she locked her phone and placed it face down. She thought the past was behind her. Seeing it again felt like being pushed back into that humiliation. But when she opened the app again, she noticed something different. The comments weren't cruel this time. People were angry on her behalf. "This is heartbreaking. How can a brother do this? She deserved better." Someone had stitched the video with recent clips of Nalitha working at Azure Coast, speaking confidently, running her small business, smiling with quiet strength. The contrast shocked viewers. The girl being thrown out wasn't broken anymore. She had risen. Within hours, the video spread everywhere. Pages reposted it with captions about dignity, self-respect, and silent comebacks. Strangers shared their own stories in the comments about family rejection, public humiliation, and starting over alone. Nalitha's name began trending, not as a victim, but as a symbol of strength. People didn't just feel sorry for her. They respected her. Nalitha sat quietly, reading messages from women who said her story gave them courage. From men who admitted they had once treated someone unfairly and now felt ashamed. Brands and local media reached out, wanting to know more about her journey. The same moment that once destroyed her dignity was now lifting others. What hurt her the most had become what protected her. The shame that once silenced her was now speaking loudly for her. Nalitha realized something powerful. When you survive without becoming bitter, the world eventually notices. She closed her phone and stared out at the ocean, her heart steady. The past had tried to define her. Instead, it had revealed her. And this time, the story belonged to her. The messages started coming in slowly, then all at once. Nalitha noticed familiar names flashing on her phone, names she hadn't heard from since the night she was thrown out of the wedding. A cousin sent a long voice note, full of praise. An aunt wrote, "We are so proud of you." The words felt strange, almost heavy. Proud. The same people who had looked away when she needed them were now suddenly very present. Then Kwanda called. Nalitha stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. His voice sounded different, softer, careful, almost polite. He congratulated her, talked about how everyone was talking about her success, how the family felt honored. He even laughed nervously and said, "You know, families fight, but blood is blood." Nalitha listened quietly, her face calm, her heart steady. Months ago, this call would have made her cry. Now it only made her aware. Soon the invitations followed. They wanted her to come back home. They wanted to clear misunderstandings. They wanted her to attend family gatherings as their success story. Between the sweet words were careful hints about financial struggles, about business ideas they needed help with, about how her support could fix everything. Nalitha noticed how no one mentioned an apology. No one asked how she had survived. They just assumed she would give the way she always had. She met a few of them later in a quiet place. They arrived with wide smiles and warm hugs that felt rehearsed. They spoke proudly of her, as if they had always believed in her. Kwanda avoided her eyes when the wedding was mentioned, brushing it off as a misunderstanding. "You know how emotions were that day," he said lightly. Nalitha nodded, not agreeing, not arguing, just listening. As they talked, Nalitha realized something important. She wasn't angry. She wasn't seeking revenge. She simply wasn't desperate anymore. The love she had once begged for no longer controlled her. She had built a life where respect came from within, not from approval. When they finally asked for her help, money, connections, favors, she took a deep breath. Her voice was calm when she spoke. She thanked them for reaching out, for their words. Then she said no. Not harshly, not emotionally, just clearly. She explained that she had responsibilities, boundaries, and a life she had worked hard to build. Their smiles faded just a little. Nalitha stood up to leave, polite and composed. As she walked away, she felt no guilt, only relief. She had learned the difference between reconciliation and convenience, and this time she chose herself, without anger, without fear, and without looking back. Nalitha didn't argue with her family anymore. She didn't explain herself again and again, and she didn't try to make them understand her pain. She had learned something important. Peace is quieter than revenge, but it lasts longer. So when more invitations came, more calls, more emotional messages asking her to come home, she gently declined. No anger, no drama, just distance. One evening, as the sun sank into the ocean and the sky turned soft shades of orange, Nalitha sat alone near the shore. The waves moved calmly, steady and strong, just like she felt inside. She thought about everything that had happened, the wedding, the humiliation, the long nights of doubt, the courage it took to start over. None of it felt wasted anymore. Every painful moment had pushed her toward the woman she had become. She opened her phone and stared at Kwanda's name for a long time. She didn't want to attack him. She didn't want an apology that came too late. She just wanted closure. So she typed a single message, simple and honest. "You kicked me out of your wedding. That push saved my life." She read it twice, then sent it. There was no shaking this time. No fear. Just calm certainty. Whatever his response would be, it no longer mattered. The message wasn't for him. It was for her. Nalitha stood up and began to walk along the shore. Her steps slow and confident. She wasn't surrounded by family. She wasn't holding anyone's hand. But she wasn't alone in the way she used to be. She had herself. She had built a life based on self-respect, not approval. And that changed everything. As the wind moved through her hair and the sound of the waves filled the air, Nalitha smiled. Not a loud smile. A quiet one, the kind that comes from knowing your worth. Her future stretched ahead, open and wide. She walked forward without looking back, unbreakable, finally free and at peace.